Welcome to Time to Teach with Tammy, the podcast that gives tips, advice, and suggestions to teachers by a real teacher. So sit back and enjoy. And oh yeah, don't forget to subscribe. And we're back. Welcome to Time to Teach, episode 57, entitled The Power of Belief. So in today's episode, you guys, I'm going to talk about a book that I read called The Biology of Belief. It's written by Dr. Bruce Lipton, and I just finished it, probably, I think like 2 or 3 days ago. And, it just left such an impression on me. So I want to talk about this book. And, I know that some of you might be thinking, well, how are you relating this book to teaching, or why are you including it on your podcast? And okay, so basically the idea of this book is all about, how the environment affects cells, and part of your environment is the beliefs and your thoughts. So your thinking is going to affect the cells. So if you have a positive environment, it's affecting your cells positively. And if you have negative thoughts and beliefs, it's affecting your cells negatively. So, is there a direct link from this and teaching? Well, of course not. Absolutely not. But there is an indirect link, which is what I'm going to kind of, bring it back to eventually at some point in today's episode. But, I think this, I don't think we can separate who we are from our teaching self. So if I'm looking at something in terms of how it's affecting me as a person, the way I'm affected as a person, it is how I'm affected as my whole person in all areas of my life. So my person as a mother, my person as a wife, my person as a learner, my person as a teacher, my person as a sister, so all of these things become into my whole self. How can you separate one area from the other? It all sort of bleeds into each other. So while this may not be something that is directly related to teaching, everything is indirectly related to myself as a teacher, because everything affects who I am, and that gets funneled down to my teaching self. So that's why I wanted to do a podcast episode on that, because I do think, I think the implications of this for what it has of me as a teacher, as me as an educator, as me as what I can do in my classroom, my work with my students, I think all of it matters and is indirectly related. So that's what and that's how. So a little bit about Dr. Bruce Lipton. So basically, I'm going to be getting some of my information from his website. So I'll link it in the show notes, but it's www.brucelipton.com, and Lipton is Lipton. Okay, so he is a stem cell biologist. At this point, he's written various books. So he has several books. I actually have another one on my wish list that I want to get going on now. Let's see, he received his PhD from the University of Virginia at Charlottesville before joining the Department of Anatomy at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine in 1973. So I'm going to be kind of like reading parts of what's on this page and then also paraphrasing kind of back and forth. It looks like he has done some research on muscular dystrophy, studies employing cloned human stem cells focused upon the molecular mechanisms controlling cell behavior. An experimental tissue transplantation technique developed by Dr. Lipton and colleague Dr. Ed Schultz and published in the journal Science was subsequently employed as a novel form of human genetic engineering. Okay, and then back in 1982, he began to examine the principles of quantum physics, which apparently biologists usually don't get too much into that field, because he kind of made an argument in his book that, the two sciences should be a little more integrated than they currently are. That cell biologists usually really don't get into the quantum physics, but I think it was the quantum physics that really helped him to kind of get to some of his understandings where he is in today. So anyway, it says 1982, he began examining the principles of quantum physics and how they might be integrated into his understanding of the cell's information processing systems. He produced breakthrough studies on the cell membrane, which revealed that his outer layer of the cell was an organic homologue of a computer chip. Of the cell's equivalent of a brain. His research at Stanford University School of Medicine between 1987 and 1982 revealed that the environment operating through the membrane controlled the behavior and physiology of the cell, turning genes on and off. So really what he discovered was kind of went against what scientists believed to be true at the time. So it says his discoveries, which ran counter to the established scientific view that life is controlled by the genes, presaged one of today's most important fields of study, the science of epigenetics. And this field is definitely something that I want to learn more about. I want to learn more about quantum physics now, just the basics. I mentioned this in a previous podcast that it was his work that actually got me interested. But then also epigenetics, because this is the actual field that his work has kind of, opened up this new field of science. Two major scientific publications derived from these studies define the molecular pathways connecting the mind and body. Many subsequent papers by the researchers have since validated his concepts and ideas. So I think it's been, at the time of this recording, I think he's been, he maybe first started his book like well over 10 years ago. So when he first wrote his book, The Biology of Belief, which is what today's podcast is based on, it was more or less not really widely known or widely believed, but since then there's been a lot more research in this area. But yeah, so a lot of the claims that he was making when this first came out would have been seen as, contrary to what most scientists were saying. Okay, so continue on here. Dr. Lipton's novel scientific approach transformed his personal life as well. He deepened understanding of cell biology, highlighted the mechanisms by which the mind controls bodily functions, and implied the existence of an immortal spirit. He applied this science to his personal biology and discovered that his physical well-being improved and the quality and character of his daily life was greatly enhanced. So just kind of want to put out a little warning out there. I'm not claiming that all of his personal beliefs are necessarily what I personally believe. And I still believe that even if you have differing views than he does in terms of spiritual, because he also brings in a spiritual aspect to this, which is, different for a scientist. You can still get a lot out of this. In fact, I would argue it's good to read or, listen to other views that do maybe differ from yours. So he brings in a lot of the science, and then he does bring in some of his conclusions of what he thinks that, spiritually there, he kind of sees God as being in the environment and all around us, not like a traditional God that, like if you're the Christian faith or the Catholic faith, it might be a different God that he believes in. But I would hate for that belief to turn anyone away because, if you believe in a different God, I think we all can agree that listening to the viewpoints, even if someone is of a different faith or religion or maybe non-faith at all, it's important to hear from all sides. How do we make sound decisions? And, it's good to look at things through a critical lens. That's what I believe anyway. So you might find that his beliefs might differ from yours in terms of spirituality and in terms of God. But nonetheless, I would say he's very, very worthy of paying attention to. So he kind of figured out that the genes were not totally in control as much as what was believed at the time of his work. It was like genes were everything and everything was predetermined. And that was something that he kind of brought up, that he was at that time, I don't know if he was necessarily depressed, but it seemed like he was maybe going through a low in his life. And if you believed in that, that diseases are predetermined and that, your genes spell out everything. And I think that can be depressing, especially if you're looking at maybe some medical history in your family that might be less than pleasant or less than desired. Of course, that can be depressing, especially if you believe that, there's no way around it. But what he actually found were that these different beliefs and thoughts really impacted cells, so that the genes really didn't have yes, genes play a part. So we're not, we're not downplaying what genes do, but absolutely there is a part to be played. But he discovered it's not as cut and dry as what was initially believed in terms of the gene's role in the cell. So a little bit about why is that true, or how is that true? So just kind of looking at what Dr. Lipton says, he explains that there are about 50 trillion cells that make up our body. Okay, so we're just a compilation of these 50 trillion cells. I like the way he kind of explains it, that we are basically, our bodies are a skin-covered petri dish, basically. And the environment of what's happening really controls the blood, or like the chemicals going into the blood, and then the blood goes to the cell. So that's how the environment is affecting it. So just to kind of break that down a little bit. Okay, so who is the environment? Well, really, we are the environment. So the things that are happening is the environment. So your beliefs, your thoughts, your perceptions even is the environment. That makes up the environment. And then that's when there is going to be a chemical reaction. Okay, where is that chemical reaction coming from? It's coming from the brain. That's where it's coming from. So Dr. Lipton explains that it starts more like an image in the brain. Okay, so it's an image in the brain, and then that is released as a chemical from the brain into the bloodstream, and of course the bloodstream, the chemical from the bloodstream to the actual cell. So that's a little bit about how that works. That's a very loose explanation. I'm not a cell biologist, but just trying to translate a little bit of why exactly, why is that true. So the way that he kind of explains it is that the brain would be the chemist, then that's the one who's releasing those chemicals, but based on the thoughts inside the brain. He's just kind of, the brain is going to translate those images and thoughts and beliefs. So that's really important, because then we really see exactly how powerful those images or those beliefs, those thoughts, those perceptions, we see how that becomes. And just in case anyone sitting there and is having doubts about that, I just want you to think about things along those lines that you already know to be true. When have you seen this in your life that proves this to be true? Well, I think we can all think back to times that we have been stressed. Okay, think about a stressful situation. Remember back to a time that you were stressed. What kind of reaction did your body have to that stress? Also, we can think about times where we are perhaps not stressed and we're having, maybe the best time of our life. How did you feel? Almost like you're running on a high, right? I mean, you can definitely, like you feel like you're on cloud nine. Imagine, the first time falling in love, that feeling of being in love. Your body reacted differently. You definitely can see those times where the things that you're thinking and feeling are causing a chemical reaction in your body. Think about embarrassing moments. Your body responded in a specific way. So I think if we stop to think about times in our life that we've actually seen this to be true, you see the evidence there that, oh yeah, I've actually, I think we know this to be true. There is a mind and body connection. Our mind is definitely sending signals to our body, and our body is reacting most definitely based on the environment, right? So that's pretty much the way that Dr. Lipton explains it, which I love, because I just think back to that, and yeah, that's so true. Have just seen that in our life so many times, where the body reacts to something going on in the brain. But a point that he makes that I think is pretty significant is, okay, so we talked about all these positive, the feelings of love and bonding and all of those good things. And then I did mention a little bit about the stress. But I think a significant point that Dr. Lipton makes is the effects of like prolonged stress or prolonged fear. He makes the argument that disease is only about 1% of disease is actually connected to our genes. So the rest of it is really chemical reactions to what's happening. They're symptoms, right? The disease itself is not really the problem. It's acting more or less like a symptom of what's going on in the body and the mind. So any kind of prolonged stress or fear, if you think about someone who might live in maybe a terrifying environment, that's going to have really negative implications on their health. They could have the best of genes, but you're putting them in an environment that is maybe unsafe, unhealthy, fear-inducing. Those things are going to bring someone's health way down. So this is very important, because I think the implications that this has, and this is why I want to share on this podcast, even though this is something unrelated to education but indirectly related. I think there are huge implications for what this means for all of us. The biggest implication is that we alone have the ability and the power to really kind of manipulate what's happening, right? So we have the power to manifest good things. in our lives, like happiness and such things like that. But then we also have the power to manifest unhappiness. And I think once we realize that we're not victims in this game of life, that we have so much more power, that becomes a game changer. And this is where I say I've always felt this to be true, but this is the first time that I've come across a scientific explanation as to why this is actually true. If you listen to my past podcast episodes, I always speak on, that I'm a positive person and I believe in being positive. But it was really nice to see that there is a science behind it. So, I think what this tells us is that we have to get a hold of our thoughts and our beliefs. Like, we really have to put those things in check. And I'm not saying that we have to be super positive all the time and super happy. It is not about that. But it's learning how to deal with things in a positive way. We are always going to encounter negative things, but I think what we need to grapple with is, okay, now how do I react to that? Because we can react in a very negative way to things that happen, or we can react in a healthy way. So we can react in a healthy way to something unpleasant, because that's not going to go away. We have to be very careful in the way that we are forming our thoughts and our actions and our words, because if we go in a prolonged state of reacting negatively or not having, maybe not being careful with our thoughts and words on a matter, I think that prolonged negativity is when we're going to see manifestations of negative things in our life. Like, that's where we're going to start experiencing health issues and whatnot, and just even an unpleasant state of mind. And of course, we all want to feel happiness and we all want to feel contentness. So I think those are the great implications, is that, to me, I find this very empowering, that I can make good things happen in my life, that I am in control of that. I'm not a victim to my genes. I'm not a victim to anything, that I have the power within me to manifest really good things in my life. Now I'm going to bring this down to the classroom. So what are the implications for me as a teacher? So, well, I think the implications are huge as a teacher, and it also kind of reminds me of Hattie's work. I think wasn't one of the number one most effective things within the classroom is a teacher's perception of his or her own efficacy, that had the most influence on student growth. Okay, so I think there is the connection right there. Is that just believing, just that perception of your own ability is going to affect what students can do. So I think when I am of the belief that I can continue to grow as a teacher, that I can have a positive influence on my students as a teacher, that's exactly what I'm going to manifest, because those beliefs are going to create that. It's going to, I think just having those beliefs are creating a healthy environment for my cells. And of course, I'm then being in this healthy state, I'm going to feel motivated. And if I feel motivated, I'm probably going to seek out learning opportunities. I'm going to try new things in my classroom. You see how it's almost like a domino effect. One good thing is going to affect another good thing. It's a chain reaction, really. Whereas if I'm feeling ineffective as a teacher, I'm probably not going to pursue, I'm not going to pursue learning as a teacher, growing as a teacher. I'm already feeling ineffective, so I'm probably not going to try my best in the classroom. I'm not going to be as effective with my students, consequently. So you can see where one thing leads to another, and it has a huge impact and implication. When I truly feel my best, I do my best in all areas. This is why I've been a huge advocate of really taking care of ourselves, getting enough sleep, getting exercise, being healthy body, healthy mind, healthy emotionally, because I have always believed this to be true, that those things are going to trickle down to everything in our life. So it's all connected. You can't have one without the other. I feel like that's a song. No, I don't know what it is, but it sounds like lyrics to a song. Anyway, so, and then not only does this have implications for our students, but I think also for our colleagues, because when we are at our best, we're also at our best with our interactions with our colleagues. And it puts us at a position where, we feel good and we can affect change if there's change to be affected. And I would argue that even if you're in the highest functioning school, the best school, there's always changes to be made. There's always growth to be made. And being of very good health mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically is going to put us at a position where we're motivated to pursue change, to help to be change agents. It's going to give us the energy. It's going to give us what we need to be our most effective self. So that's where I believe this was a very powerful message that I wanted to share with all of you, because even though it's an indirect connection to education, the connection is there. It's really there. And I just think for myself, I want to pursue learning more about epigenetics and learning about how I can positively control my environment so I can be the best me, the best wife, the best mother, the best sister, the best friend, the best teacher, the best colleague. I want to be the best that I can, and I really feel like for me, pursuing this field is going to help me to better understand what I can do to do that. And I hope that you guys enjoyed today's podcast. I know it's a little bit different from some of what I've done, but I hope that you find it empowering, and I hope that it maybe sparks an interest in you. Again, I know this is just kind of an untraditional topic, but because I was reading this book and because of what's happening in my life is really what becomes content in my podcast episodes, it really makes total sense that I would take something that I'm currently reading, or just really finished reading actually, and apply that and then that becomes content, because that's where I get all my content. It's things that I'm currently working with or things that I'm currently grappling with. So untraditional or not, I really wanted to share this with you. So yeah, I hope you guys find it empowering and whatnot. But that was basically it. That was what I wanted to share today in the podcast, was that, we really are not victims. We have more power than we really know. And I hope that you can apply that in your life in a good way too, because to me, I find this life changing. Okay, it is now time for us to move on to wins and fails for the week. I think my win for the week, it pretty much goes along with what this podcast is about. I just feel like so far during the summer break, I've really been learning about some powerful things that I'm going to be able to take with me and move forward in my own personal life and in my professional life to be able to manifest really good things. So the things that I'm learning about, I feel has the potential to just, I don't know, really affect my life in such a positive way. And I can't really imagine anything more powerful than that. Something that is life-changing, that you can take forward and is going to impact you for a lifetime. You don't really get a bigger win than that. So I think that definitely has to be my win. Fails for the week. I don't really think I have any fails for the week. I haven't really tried out anything new that hasn't worked. I'm, not grappling with anything major here. So fails for the week. If there is a fail, it's just that I don't really have a fail to share with you guys. So, that's it. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, and if you're interested in learning more about epigenetics or even reading the book, The Biology of Belief, which, by the way, I just want to be very clear, this episode is not by any way sponsored. I'm not trying to promote this book. I just happened to read it and really believed in it and its message and wanted to share that with you guys. But I don't want this to come off as like this is a sponsored episode. Nope, this is not sponsored at all. This is me truly reading this book and just feeling very empowered by it and wanting to share that with you. But yeah, if you're interested in it and you want to learn more about it, please, I'd love to hear from you. Even if you just want to share your thoughts on this topic, you can tweet to me. I am at TammyJ123. Tammy is TamiJ123. And I'll see you next time.
Wait a minute. Wait 1 minute. Before you go, don't forget you can catch our show notes online at www.timetoteach.libsyn. That's libsyn.com. We're also on Facebook at Time to Teach. Don't forget to check out our Facebook group, Teachers for Effective Curriculum. And if you're an educator with your own podcast show, I invite you to join our brand new Facebook group, Teachers Who Podcast. Let's grow a community where we can network, problem solve, and discuss anything and everything podcast related. I'll see you there.